The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, meet a father and son and a father and daughter who all share a love of performing on stage, and learn how they're working together on the next production at Spotlight Community Theater just in time for Father's Day. Why should women consider writing a detailed account of their marriage story before a possible divorce? Author Stephanie Hahn offers her own experience as an example. And celebrating the 25th anniversary of a television show that many find gives them a sense of comfort and well-being. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. While having no relation to this show, Spotlight Community Theater is a grassroots performing arts group that seeks to shine a spotlight on Tucsonans of all ages who want to give acting a try. Any experience or ability level is welcome, and next we'll meet 4 participants who are hoping their original play for Father's Day, called The Unusual Subjevts, will bring joy to their audience.
My name is Christopher Beta. I'm assistant director, and this year I'm playing security guard number 1 and 2 as one character.
I am Chris Abeta. I'm the owner and director, and this year I am playing the role of the lawyer.
I'm Newt Tussaud, and I will be playing the role as Ricky, aka Daddy Longlegs.
My name is Emma Tussaud. I am 11 years old, and my role is the gem dropper.
Okay, so this sounds like a typical Spotlight Community Theater production in the sense that it's got some whimsy, it's got some comedy, it's family friendly, and you're doing it on behalf of a good cause.
Yeah. This year we are raising money for Alice Cooper's Solid Rock Foundation, their teen centers that they open up around Arizona. What they do is they open their doors up to teens. I believe it is up until the age of 21. They can come in and learn free classes through dancing, acting, band, art classes, just anything that you can think of in terms of the spanning of art. They can come in and they can learn it for free, and that's to the point where we want to get with Spotlight, is where we can do this completely for free and open our doors up to anyone that wants to be a part, just helping to keep kids off the street, because I think the more we continue to educate and continue to have opportunities for kids like Emma or kids like me when I was her age.
Did you get a chance to meet Alice Cooper?
I did, yeah. I got to go up to their big Coop Stock event that they do in Phoenix, and I got to meet him after the show and tell him a little bit about Spotlight. And safe to say, it sounds like they are supporters of the cause now, yeah.
So, Christopher, tell me a little bit about the inception of this production.
Chris actually has been the writer for the last 2 productions. When he first came to me with how I would have done it and said I had written this, and I read it and I found it hilarious, and I was very surprised, and he said, let's do this, and so we backed him completely. He said, let's do it. And then whenever that was done, immediately he seemed like he was writing already and came up with The Unusual Subjects. His mother and I just been so proud of him, and just supportive of everything that he's doing. I like the way he writes. I like the stories he comes up with, and so I'm proud to be a part of it, and that he makes it all family friendly. Means a lot to us, and so I'm glad to get to be a part of this in his life.
Chris, I know starting out you have to kind of fight a little bit for recognition.
I heard growing up a lot that, it takes 3 years to get a business off the ground and get people to recognize who you are. It took time for people to understand who we were, to get kind of what we're doing. But I feel like kind of now we've become a little bit of a household name, enough to where, I've gotten recognized in public a few times by people that have either seen the show or seen us on AZPM or through the news stories that have been done. So, yeah, I think now we've gotten to a point where we're a little bit more of a household name.
So, Newt, tell me something about your background with theater and how it is that you came to audition for this play.
Unfortunately, I don't really have too much of a background in theater.
It's not a
most
problem.
is maybe freshman year of high school. That's about it. This all came about of kind of trying to look at my life a little bit differently and trying to get myself out of my bubble. And this opportunity was presented to us by a friend, a mutual friend. and I was just looking for opportunities to do some more quality stuff one-on-one with my daughter, and it has been fantastic ever since joining.
So thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor.
Okay. And Emma, tell me about getting involved with Spotlight Community Theater.
Honestly, I just wanted to spend more time with my dad, and when it was presented to him, first thing I said was yes.
So you were confident he could do it. But you've had more stage experience than your father. Is that true?
Yes. At my school that I go to, they have plays every single year, and I'm always in them.
What do you like about being in plays? What's fun about being on stage in front of people?
It's just fun to play a character that's different from you. It's fun to try out different personalities.
So how has it been feeling for you, Newt? You said you wanted to try to break out of your shell a little bit, try something new, but has it been a good fit?
It was a little nerve-wracking at first, I have to admit that. But as time has gone on, and after doing the first production with them and leading into the second one, it's like riding a bike. It's kind of just seems fit. We have a great cast and community, and so it's honestly just been fantastic. I was a little surprised of how well it was going to fit. I had a little doubts in my mind, but that's also the mindset I've been trying to face and get away from. So this was definitely a good fit for me. A lot of good people here.
Emma, do you think you want to continue acting as you get older?
Yes, I think I would like it. Maybe I could go somewhere with it. Maybe.
Christopher, from soup to nuts with a production, there's so many different stages you have to go through. The audition stage, working off the page, working without the page. What's your favorite?
My favorite part of the entire production is the group bow at the end. When we've all been through, like you said, the scripts have been wrinkled and put away, and our notes have been scribbled on 3x5 cards, and our costumes have been scraped together, and we finally get our parts memorized, and we get up and the performance is done, and we've done a good job, we feel like. And you stand there in front of that audience and take each other's hands and do that big bow, and you hear that applause. It's a feeling that you can't ever do without once you've experienced it. So it drives, I think, actors and performers to keep doing what they do whenever your art is appreciated.
Chris, you want to tell the audience how they can see this play?
Absolutely, yeah. This show is The Unusual Suspects, and we're presenting it at 445 East Speedway Boulevard. Kind Pastor Ed over at the Tucson First Southern Baptist Church has allowed us to use their extra chapel, and we are beyond grateful. So please, come see the show. This is the second time that we're actually doing online ticketing now, so we're no longer just cash at the door the way we've been for 5 years before this. So they can get tickets online on our website, spotlightcommunitytheater.com. This show we're doing, it is a Father's Day production, so it's the second weekend in June, and dads come free on the last day of the show. So if they use the code DAD at checkout, they get a free ticket for one of the fathers, and that's why I thought it would be appropriate to not only bring my dad, but one of the other dads that are in the production.
Come see the show, please.
Author Stephanie Hahn now lives in Hawaii, but she earned her MFA at the University of Arizona. Hahn has spent a lifetime traveling the world, living in some very diverse places. She received acclaim for her 2017 story collection, Swimming in Hong Kong, and now runs a newsletter called Woman Warrior Writer, where she interviews other authors about documenting their life experiences. Next, Tony Paniagua talks with Stephanie Hahn about why she is passionate in helping women avoid making the mistakes that she almost made.
Stephanie Hahn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And one of the many things that you've done in life is, of course, like a lot of other people, you were at one point married, you had a child, and now you are divorced, and you're using your experiences to try to help other women. Can you tell us about that?
I was married for over 20 years. I divorced, and during the divorce process, I was asked by my attorney to write my divorce story for my legal file. And even if I was a writer, I found it extremely difficult to do so. Like, how would I encapsulate 20, 21 years of my life? I just procrastinated. I couldn't do it. And finally, push came to shove and I wrote it. And in the process of writing it, I got a lot of clarity, but I also developed a kind of a story structure for it. And I taught high school for years and college, especially the first 2 years, and we all know the 5-paragraph essay is the foundation of your life for at least 6 to 8 years of schooling. And so I knew that if I came up with a structure, I could write my divorce story quite easily, and that is what I did. And writing my story for my personal and legal file changed the emotional and financial outcome of my divorce. And it was after inserting my divorce story into my file that I realized, hey, other women should do this too. So I put it in my file. Upon reading my file, the mediator said these people should be in 2 separate rooms, and this allowed me to better negotiate financially. I was not intimidated quite as much. I could collect myself, and this allowed me to sort of put on my business hat just a bit more easily. And so I realized there is a real value financially and legally in writing it, and for women to have their voice in their legal file. Of course, you have to ask your attorney for this. But I also realized for me, for personal reasons, it was also helpful because there may be a day that my own family might want to know the reasons, and maybe you don't disclose it all when the children are young, et cetera, as to why there was this disruption in the family narrative, and you will have that as a record.
You mentioned you're not a therapist, you are not an attorney, you are a writing teacher, and yet this PDF, this e-guide that you are providing is quite helpful because women are asked to frequently tell their divorce story, if you will, to different entities. And this way it's down, and here you can read it if you like.
Exactly. So, in the divorce process, you're repeating your personal narrative to your lawyer, to, let's say your therapist, the child's counselor, this person, the accountant, whoever. And it just gets repetitive and boring and stressful. If it's all down on a piece of paper or whatever, your computer, you can simply print it out and hand it out. And I do say, put your financials on the last page, print out a hard copy, and you don't have to disclose all of your sort of personal financial business, but the emotional story, perhaps this is something that's of value for the counselor to know, and therefore you can hand it. So you're not forgetting anything, so it's really a practical document too.
You mentioned that women don't, quote, recreationally divorce, and that they still encounter a lot of the blame for marriages that don't work. You want to help them out.
The big question and the big problem with divorce, psychologically or emotionally for women, is that we're often tasked with keeping the family together. There's this idea that persists of hearth and home. This is enforced by religious traditions, cultural mores, whatever. And so the idea of divorce is really one that disturbs not only the family structure, but also your personal psyche. You feel like you were the one to blame for all of this because you failed somehow. And so what I'm hoping to do is to release that feeling of shame. Divorce is something that happens for a variety of reasons, and it happens. Nobody recreationally does it. There's a high penalty to pay if you divorce, financially, personally, legally, culturally, in terms of how your child is treated, how you navigate socially. So this attempt to even erase no-fault divorce is really attack on people's personal liberties.
How has divorce, or how does divorce, let's speak in general, help people if they are, for example, in a marriage that they didn't want to be in, or they had an abusive situation, and getting that power or that strength to walk away from that marriage?
I think that what people don't understand is that an idea of marriage as it is traditionally defined, usually through religious texts or even societally, really does enforce a lot of patriarchal norms. Once a woman steps outside of her house, she enters a world of inequity. She has already had to present herself in a certain way to be acceptable. She might be more vulnerable to cold because of what she's wearing. There might be a physical safety element because, the neighborhood's not good or whatever. So the second she steps out of the door, she is entering a world that does not honor her body or experience. So the only place of safety she has where she can be her full self would be in the privacy of your home. And if you do not have that in your home, if you are vulnerable in a way to violence, to disparagement, to anything that doesn't honor your full self, you are free nowhere. And so this is part of what I think people need to understand about divorce. It is often a reaction against patriarchal norms that are insufferable.
Stephanie, we know you're not an attorney, but what do you know about no-fault divorce right now and what its status is?
Well, no-fault divorce was really something that became much more common in the late 20th century when you didn't have to prove and blame one party legally, right? People could say there was no fault and they could civilly disband their marriage. But what's happening is there are certain states led by conservative governmental figures and parties who believe that people divorce without thinking about it. They are not really looking at the fact that a divorce is emotionally wrenching. It is a terrible situation for all parties. And to have to blame one party or prove this or air this about the privacy between two people, I think is completely out of bounds for government. And what they also proved was that when you had the no-fault divorce, women's suicide rate declined. There was less domestic violence issues because a woman who's in a situation of domestic violence could then get out of the marriage, right, without proving it one way or another. And there's also a lot, because there's so much baggage with getting a divorce in terms of shame or public discussion of what went wrong. When you get into having to blame somebody, proving the fault and error, this is going to compound and keep people in an unhappy situation, both parties. So this is terrible that it's coming up as the elimination of no-fault divorce is under discussion by many parties now.
Stephanie Hahn, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
If you grew up with a TV, chances are good that you have a show that's become almost like a lifelong friend, offering guidance and comfort. When news of a public radio podcast that covers a show that a coworker has expressed her undying love for, I urged her to do the interview. Here is AZPM's Laura Holansky.
The fast-talking pop culture-filled show with two caffeine-addicted women turned 25 years old last year. Gilmore Girls has been a comfort show for generations, and people still can't let go of Stars Hollow's homey feel and characters. A place where fans haven't lived, but they all know their way around. For this segment, I spoke with Cassandra Basler, the editor of Connecticut Public Radio's Generation Gilmore Girls podcast. We talked about why the show is still relevant 25 years later. Just for the start, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Cassandra Basler. I've been working on Generation Gilmore Girls as an editor. It's a podcast all about the TV we love and how it shapes us. So the concept was that because the Gilmore Girls are set in Connecticut, the show is set in Connecticut, we wanted to really capitalize on the fact that we could do some in-person reporting at some of the fan festivals that are taking place throughout the state. I think the show has really had a second life since it hit streaming. So younger generations are finding the show as they're, watching it on Netflix, or maybe they're catching reruns on old cable TV stations. There really are a lot of people who came from all over the country to see a little taste of Stars Hollow.
Cassie, as someone from Michigan, how did Gilmore Girls, came into your life and how did it shape you?
I actually started watching because I got a reporting job in Connecticut, and I told some of my friends in journalism school I was going to be moving to New Haven, and they had all said, "Oh my gosh, you'll be just like Rory in Gilmore Girls." And I said, "Wait, who? I haven't seen the show." And everyone was like, "Oh, you have to watch it. It's so charming. It's really funny." So I binge watched it all when I moved up here, and I thought that it gave a really nice look at what parts of Connecticut are like. Definitely the small town community vibe of some of those places. Their impression of New Haven was a little different from the real life city that I lived in for 10 years. Like they showed a ton of what's meant to be Yale's campus, even though it was never actually filmed on campus there. And I think that they got a lot of essence of like the traditions of the colleges right, but we don't see a ton of Rory exploring the city and all the fun stuff there is to do. Like there's a lot of live music venues and cool record stores, and we were just kind of surprised she didn't spend a lot more time sort of engaging in that part of the city life in the years when she was at Yale on the show.
Reporter to reporter, was this a realistic depiction of journalism that the show created?
Rory in particular definitely takes her job seriously as a reporter, like especially in the years where we see she takes over the Yale Daily News. I never worked as a reporter at my college paper. I was a copy desk editor for the Michigan Daily. So that was my only newspaper reporting experience, but I can definitely relate to some of the scenes they had about, crashing on deadline to get their edition to the printer in time to make it out for the edition in the morning. But I do think that she seems to be more of a columnist. Like when we hear about some of her stories that she actually reports on, like I think in one of the very early seasons, she writes sort of a meditation on repaving a parking lot at her high school. And then later on in some of the later seasons, she's more of like a critic where she critiques someone's ballet performance. So we don't get to see a lot of her like hard-hitting investigative stuff except for the series where she tries to investigate the secret society on Yale's campus. And I think one of the things that surprised me about that was that she ended up having a relationship with the person who invited her to the secret society. And I'm like, oh, it kind of plays into some negative, untrue tropes about journalists and the media that it's okay to have relationships with your sources. Like, we definitely don't want friendships or anything like that crossing the lines.
See, that's very interesting that you said that. I never even looked at it in that angle. But how is that, a small town in Connecticut speaks to a global audience? What are some of the success factors of the show?
The style of the script writing, how it was really fast-paced and kind of quippy, that really reflected some of the old school black and white film from like the 1930s and 40s. The style was a nice nod to that classic showbiz. So it sounded like it was a love letter almost to all of the pop culture that Amy Sherman Palladino had consumed throughout her life. The scripts were really smart, and I think the idea that Richard just read a lot of news, and so did Rory. I do think they commented a lot on world events and politics, and it's so cool that Madeleine Albright had a cameo on the show. Just really impressive, both political figures, not just pop culture. I think they had the singer Paul Anka on, who, again, when I first watched the show, I did not know who Paul Anka was. But, I knew who Madeleine Albright was, and I was like, wow, how did they get her? Was she a fan? So I do think some of that stuff is just really impressive.
Amy Sherman Palladino said that the show would probably not get on air this day and age. What do you think of that, and why do you think that is?
We talked to another show creator, a woman who wrote the show Ginny and Georgia, which is another mother-daughter kind of comedy, dramedy that got popular on Netflix a couple years ago. And she had loved Gilmore Girls and sort of thought that if you were pitching a show today, like she had to, you would need a hook right away. You couldn't just come in and say, oh, it's about mother-daughter relationships. You would actually need to say, it's about mother-daughter relationships complicated by the fact that the mom's a murderer. Right now, it's sort of you have to appeal to so many different people who have short attention spans. A lot of us are looking at email or texting while we're watching TV, and there wasn't as much of a pressure to compete with so many screens back in the early 2000s when Gilmore Girls came out. The timing of that show was right in a certain way, because if you think about it, it was like the early Bush administration years, so there was a lot of push for like quote unquote family friendly programming. And at the time, the network that Gilmore Girls was on, the WB, had a lot of like teen romance dramas, and there was a push to do more shows that could appeal to both mothers and daughters, stuff that you wouldn't have to worry about like a young kid walking in on while you were watching. And Gilmore Girls kind of fit that niche. The other thing is that they were allowed to sort of do their own thing, and I think studios are maybe a little bit more buttoned up or involved in all of their projects because they're worried about ratings and return on investment.
It's evergreen because the viewers' daughters are now probably in a different life phase. How do you find the show still relevant as, 10 years later, or I don't know how long ago was that you first watched it?
I did first watch it about 10 years ago now. There's so many pop culture references. I didn't watch it while it was live on TV, but I was a preteen during the era when it was on. So some of the references they're making to like Britney Spears and like boy bands and things in the era, I'm like, oh, I remember that. So there's like a little bit of nostalgia there for me. And then hearing a bit more like from Lane Kim's character, who she loves music, right? And I also am a music nerd, so she drops a ton of references to like David Bowie and Fleetwood Mac and all these amazing rock groups and things throughout the years. It may be more music that my parents' generation listened to, but because of her appreciation for it, it like stands the test of time. The aspirational dynamic between Lorelai and Rory is also a reason people come back to it. Maybe it's young women who are thinking of having kids, hoping like, oh, I want to be like a good friend to my daughter someday, when I start a family. Or maybe people who have a little more fraught relationship with their mom, like Lorelai has with her mother, Emily. There's just a lot that you can relate to when you're seeing all those different kinds of female relationship dynamics and friendships and all of that.
My guest was Cassandra Basler, editor of Connecticut Public Radio's Generation Gilmore Girls podcast. You can listen to it at the Connecticut Public Radio Spotify. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Laura Rolansky.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.